my friend Tony. He's here and he's actually in the US. He spends a lot of his time over in Egypt working with a cold calling company. He's going to tell us all about that. But this is the first time that they've really presented publicly. So I had to coerce him a little bit to come on and talk to you all, because what they offer is such a just a high level of service that they've never done a presentation like this. It's all been word of mouth, and they've grown phenomenally. So you have to be doing something right if you're able to grow like that without advertising. So I'm not going to do a super long intro because I know he could tell us all the stuff. But Tony, I appreciate you coming on, and I'm going to kick it over to you, and let's get started. Let's hear what's going on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I am super excited to be here. I really appreciate it. And I will jump right in. All right, guys. So ResVA is a virtual assistant company. We do lead generation for real estate investors. I'm going to dive right into our ICP. I dislike avatars, guys, so feel free to hop in if you have any questions, but I like using real people. I think that you can go speak to them directly as opposed to creating an avatar, and I end up thinking that that's more useful. Brett's been in business for a very long time. They convert 10 plus contracts a month, and they're very, very good at taking a hand raise or a person who's moderately interested all the way down to a closed contract. And so why is this person our ideal customer is because cold calling kind of sits in a really interesting spot where there's data and pulling data ahead of it, and there's follow-up before it, or sorry, data before it and follow-up after. So we sit in the middle of a process, and we need somebody to be good at the follow-up process to ultimately convert on a cold call or texting lead. The problem statement is that as real estate investors grow, they need to reliably produce revenue. So as you bring on project managers, as you bring on acquisitions people, you need to feed those people regularly as opposed to when business comes in. And so as real estate investment companies are scaling, providing predictable revenue kind of becomes the foundation of being able to invest in growing the team and the operation. And so we solve that through consistent lead management, texting, and cold calling.
I think that's incredibly important, and it's been so challenging because the rules are changing. Where I think I made a post where we used to do 70,000 SMS text messages a week, and those days are long gone. But the reason I liked text messaging and cold calling as well is it can be a very targeted list. You can really pick exactly who you want to go out there and target. If you want just people in the state who have 3 bedrooms and 1 bath, you can literally pull that list where, when you do something like PPC, it's going to be a far more scattershot, just like whoever wants to call you is going to call you in, and you get a lot of trashy leads that may not fit your buy box. So I love what you guys do. And I definitely cold calling is still working just great for some of the biggest companies in the country.
That's a really interesting point, and I think that it's worth mentioning that there's a varying array of skill in terms of targeting, and targeting is something that any real estate investor can get good at. It is it is like a known entity. It is not magic in any form, and there's plenty of places that you can say, like, I would really like to dial in my targeting. Or in some cases, customers say, we don't want to do that. Please take care of it for us, and we're happy to provide that for the people who kind of want who don't want to deal with it.
Oh, nice.
From a size perspective, this exists across all areas of real estate. We've got a group of people who do more than 20 contracts and a group of people who do, 10 to 20 or 2 to 9. I think that when you look at size of customer, growing predictably will always be a challenge. And so whether you're at 5 contracts a month or 25 contracts a month, there's a good chance that a large part of your day goes towards figuring out how to grow reliably and bring in leads. So Sean is the co-founder and CEO of ResVA. He also runs a juggernaut of an organization in Columbus, Ohio. They do 20 to 25 contracts a week, wholesale fix and flip. Last week, they did 12 contracts, best on record. And when Sean was in Egypt, he was looking at a different cold call company and was approached by Zane, who is a phenomenal operator and who is our point of contact in Cairo. And so, Zane approached Sean in the parking lot and said, I'm absolutely certain I can do your cold calling better for you. And since then, we've grown to just under 60 customers, again, using all word of mouth marketing, over 150 team members and 100 VAs. And last on the team, I'm happy to join. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh. I've spent the last 20 years of my life in venture capital backed technology companies. I sold a security technology company in the title and escrow space in 2018. I'm passionate about building high functioning teams, and also passionate about Bitcoin, poker, and entrepreneurship.
Nice. You're not a Steelers fan, are you?
I am a Steelers fan and happy to talk
Oh,
about the free agency moves and how we're going to
I thought we were
force
going to be
next year.
buddies.
Who do you like, David?
Patriots, man, Patriots.
Man, I am here if you need to talk about it.
We're taking our lumps right now. Let me just tell you, we're taking it like champs. So
Yeah. All right, guys. So I think essentially with cold calling, there are pieces that, like, when I think about what differentiates a company, relentless optimism is required. Cold calling is a very, very tough field. It is something that burnout is absolutely a possible and regular thing that we deal with team members. And so having relentless optimism is important, because we find that the attitude of the callers, like how they're feeling and how they're treated, are incredibly important. And so when we say at the end there, you see respect for team and partners, at other cold call companies, you occasionally don't treat the people who work for you incredibly well. And so, we think that there's nothing magical about cold calling, but we think that with a really good operating system, really good respect for your partners, and imbuing the company in relentless optimism, we think that that's like a winning strategy. And as you go about looking for cold call companies and considering them, I think that getting down to the level of understanding how they work within their team is important, because that is really where we find the difference among companies that execute really, really well and companies that do not.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead, David.
that's okay. I want to say that that's really important. Like anybody can cold call, let's be honest. So a lot of people be like, well, I could just do that myself. Well, let me be honest. I've tried cold calling. It's terrible. Um, it's a grind. And then I thought at one point, oh, well, I'll just open my own cold calling center here in the US. And we did. We rented a big office and we built cubicles and we did all the things. And we had about 15 cold callers just for our company. One, it was incredibly expensive. We were paying them $15 an hour. And I mean, it is an absolute grind to, manage those people and, keep them, keep all of the stuff, all the balls up in the air when you're juggling. So, you know, it's a necessary thing because, as you said in the beginning, keeping that lead flow for your acquisitions managers is absolutely crucial. So, with you guys, I know that the quality is always going to be there, and we're going to be getting our leads. So it's a good
Yeah,
job.
thank you. Building on that, that's a great point. And I think that, when you work with us, people oftentimes when they say, I'm going to hire a cold caller, or I'm going to hire 2 cold callers and do it myself, having 2 cold callers, there was about 8, 9 months ago, there was a time when we would hire 1 cold caller per 1 campaign. And it was actually much easier to manage than what we do today. What we do today is that you're paying for a 9-hour calling day, and that we're rotating 4 to 5 callers per day throughout your campaign. And the reason why that's better is, and then why productivity when we made that change went up 80%, was that how the cold callers are feeling and keeping them fresh is incredibly important. And so you're getting the benefit of an at-scale organization, even if you only have 1 to 2 cold callers. And so sometimes people ask us, they say, hey, I'd like to only do 1 cold caller. We definitely don't do it like that. And at like an 80% increase in productivity, we'll probably never go back. We're always going to continue cycling people, and have found that that's one of kind of the hard-earned truths that we have learned as a company over the past 18 months of existence, is that it's much, much better when you rotate people. And we strongly encourage people to take advantage of our economies of scale in terms of
That's exactly what I was going to bring up, economies of scale. Similar to like our transactions business. Sure, you could hire your own person, but figuring it out is going to take you forever. With your cold callers, like you have a culture and a business and you're training them, and you're constantly, trying to improve what you're doing, and trying to figure that out on your own it's dumb. You're not going to be able to do it. And honestly, you guys can do it better and you can do it cheaper.
Yeah. Megan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the kind of webinar where we're allowed to ask questions, but I thought I'd give it a shot.
It
David, is
is.
that okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So, Tony, I noticed on your slide here, you've got ResVA growing pretty significantly this year from last year and then again next year. So, I would love to hear from you what makes ResVA different and how are you guys thinking about that growth?
Yeah, so great question. I would say right now we are still in the ambiguous part of the company figuring out marketing. We appreciate David having us on, and this is the first time that we've presented in a public forum. And so right now, 100% of our growth is coming from word of mouth marketing, and people who are happy kind of passing us to friends and family. As we think about continuing through this year and next year, obviously that's not going to be possible, and we're going to have to add some growth functions related to the marketing and sales side. We believe right now that the type of marketing that David does at Easy seems like a really, really good method. And part of my excitement in joining this was basically seeing his process, how the message is spread, how the marketing team works with people. And so I suspect that in my perfect version of a magic state, we would eventually build out something like this. Though I'll confess I don't know how long that takes to do. And then with any growth, I think that the growth that we've had, because it's been for people who are referrals and people who we know deeply, we care about growing well. And so, we don't have outside investment capital. Like, we can grow at the speed and pace that we want. And so we're going to continue to grow, but grow in a profitable, methodical manner rather than at breakneck speed. I would say that this has been a fortunate set of circumstances, but I don't know that we'll maintain the rapid pace of growth, for the entire next 2-3 years.
Nice.
Good question.
Also nice to have Megan Harris here, the owner of Empora Title out of Ohio. So happy to, we got all the superstars today.
Guys, as we continue on, we do cold calling and texting. We also do lead management. And again, data and skip tracing, not a large part of our business. Happy to do to remove the variable when people want. But this is an area that we do strongly encourage people to become better at. It's an area that pays dividends in the future. And so we're happy to help train you if you'd like to have a conversation about that. But definitely think and encourage people to think deeply about who they're targeting, how they're targeting, and how to do what they do in the most efficient manner possible.
When you say lead management, is that just like keeping track of all the lists you've pulled, or what do you mean there?
Yeah, so when you think about a lead funnel, great question. We think about it in terms of like texting being all the way at the top of the funnel, where like the commitment is so small on a text. You text someone, are you looking to sell? They might say, yeah, show me an offer. And they also require the most follow-up. So texting is incredibly efficient, dollar in, dollar out. It's always been CCS's most profitable channel for marketing, but it also requires the most work to get down to the bottom of the funnel. Whereas cold calling, we would put in like a medium level of effort, where, it still requires 30 to 70 days to get a lead that goes in from cold calling down to a closed contract. So we consider lead management the effort that goes all the way from when a lead initially enters your system up until, in some places closed digitally, they go all the way through acquisition, but much more normally it's setting the appointment for the person to go walk the house in person, go check the house out, and go from there. And so we consider lead management the follow-up. It's actually a skill that we think is probably 10 times harder to find and recruit for than cold calling, because the goal of the cold caller is to find someone who raises their hand and minimally qualify the lead. The goal of the lead manager is to have quality conversations with the homeowner, to truly understand their motivation, to massage that person down the funnel and get them ready for acquisition. And so lead management, we think, is a significantly harder skill to hire and find for, but we will, after a time, do it for customers when they ask us to.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
All right, guys. So when you think about your scripts, the reason that scripts are so important is this is the largest lever that you have over the funnel. And so I use Sean as an example. Sean has a small army of cold callers for Columbus, Ohio. He has an incredibly wide funnel. And so when we say we use a hand raised script, what that means is anyone who says that they're selling in the next 6 months goes into our system. The reason for that is that Sean has an incredibly wide array of exit strategies. He can fix and flip. He can hold. He can do novations. He can do wholesales. And so He can do realtor referrals. And so he wants everything going through his system because he is a very sophisticated lead management organization that can triage those people and follow up as needed. For people who are incredibly busy and who are maybe starting, they used to do commercial and now they want to maybe consider getting into wholesaling, we recommend the other side, which is a high motivation script where we can go all the way down to qualifying depending on your buy box. Whereas if you get really, really specific, you may only expect, one lead every 2 weeks, for an example, depending on how aggressive you want us qualifying people. And then of course the 4 pillars is, kind of something in the middle with a normal market and normal data. You'd expect 1 to 2 leads a day. And so, when you think about these good lead or bad lead, really you should be thinking about like the amount of effort that it takes to get them down to close contract and ensure that your follow-up and acquisitions pieces of your organization can match your kind of front end deal flow.
So you'd say kind of going from hand raised script to high motivation, high motivation, they're going to be closer to being ready to sign a contract.
That's right. And we can ask them more questions. So if sometimes wholesale companies, they need to acquire properties at much below market value. And so we don't mind going down and qualifying those, but you're obviously going to get less of them if we're doing the qualifying versus somebody internal on your side. And so for people who are really busy, we typically tell people you should start in the middle, right? But for people who are very busy and they say, I'm only going to have 10 hours to be doing XYZ part of the process, then we can go with the high motivation. Or if you have an incredibly sophisticated organization and you want to take advantage of every last, drop of lead that comes in through the system, then you can go with the hand raise script, provided you have the lead follow-up sophistication to see ROI on those people.
Yeah. So I love that because as you guys are growing your business, you could just kind of keep opening that funnel up just a little bit more. So as you're adding in, your acquisitions agents and you're like, hey, I need 20% more leads. Well, it may not be buying more leads. It may just be opening up your funnel a little bit. Right.
100% correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's a good group that's thinking about it can regularly grow and scale while maintaining a lead team if they can keep a good pace on their funnel. So that's absolutely 100% right.
100%. Because if you can handle those leads, like Sean's doing, like the money's in the follow-up, right? I think it's great that you're looking for people that want to sell within the next 6 months because not everybody's going to do a 1-call close. Not everybody's ready today, but let's have that conversation. Let's build that rapport. Let's kind of, let's start talking to them and setting the seeds for when they're ready to make that decision. Now you're that trusted source. I think that's great.
Awesome. All right, guys. So let's talk about some of the dangers of cold calling. The first and most important, we were just talking about investing in a cold call funnel. Let's say that you were going to spend $1 on a cold call funnel. We would tell you to spend 20% on data, 30% on the cold call agent, and 50% on the follow-up process. And so right now, you could hire us today, and 70% of whether or not this is going to be successful comes from your ability to pull and provide lists accurately and your ability to follow up with customers. Cold calling is a relatively mathematical piece of the funnel. And so, I can reliably add in your market 1, 2, 3 callers and scale leads relatively well, depending on the size of the total market. And so follow-up is the most important place for you to invest in, and organizations with an exceptional follow-up process can very easily add cold callers. And so if you're thinking, where do I spend my time? You absolutely want to be great at follow-up no matter what. Many of you probably already are. And then you can start to talk about layering on some of the other marketing options.
Nice.
Oh, sorry, David, you have something there?
Oh, no, I think you're absolutely right. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
So creating a very wide funnel at the start, people will start and say, I want everything going through my funnel. We can handle it. A month later, they have 300 leads in their system and they're saying, well, this person says they don't want to sell for another year. So be aware, like widening the funnel will create an enormous amount of work for your organization. And that's okay if you're prepared to take it on. But I would not start with an extremely wide funnel unless you are already a sophisticated organization. And, if you're wondering, are we, then the answer is probably not. And so happy to talk to you about that anytime. But again, like I said, creating a very, very wide funnel is a recipe for not getting value on your cold callers. And so you need to be thoughtful about your second half of your process and organization. Hiring the cheapest labor possible. I mean, anyone in real estate can tell you a situation where they paid for something cheap and got what they paid for. I will tell you guys, there are places that you can find cold callers for $5, $4 an hour, that are outsourcing. And, I think that goes all the way up to a scale where if you're hiring in America, we found cold call companies paying $23 an hour. And so, there is a wide range of how to set these things up. If you'd like more information on this, of course, I'm happy to chat with you anytime. And failure to track key metrics. This one I would say is one of the ones that we find is most common. So, we have customers that come in and say, we have a cold call problem. And, we need to first differentiate for us, do we have a data problem, a cold call problem, or a follow-up problem? And so we ask people, could you give me your speed to lead metric? Very frequently there's like a blank stare and a 15-second pause. Like, what do you mean speed to lead? I said, well, if we put a lead into your system, I want to know the amount of minutes, sometimes hours, but ideally the amount of minutes from the time that we put a lead into your system to the time that that first call goes out. Additionally, I want to know what percent of people we're sending a lead to that you're actually connecting with. So we have 60 customers nationwide and can benchmark data for what percent of people you ought to be connecting with. And so just tracking those two little pieces will enable us to say, okay, we need to be focusing on something on our end, or we need to be focusing on the follow-up process. And again, most common, it's the follow-up process. It's a larger, more challenging section of the marketing funnel that needs handled than cold calling. And so naturally, you'll find more problems in follow-up than you will in cold calling or data.
Tony, let me jump in there because I want to talk about the cheapest labor possible. Guys, there are probably only a handful of really good quality cold calling companies in the world. Like I'm telling you, I have over 100 rental properties. So I will tell you this, believe me, I'm on a lot of people's lists and I get a lot of phone calls. And I can't tell you, how many of them it's just they hire, I'm sure they're nice people, but the $2, $3, $4 an hour cold callers. And literally, I pick it up, I'm like, hello, and there's just nothing for maybe 30 seconds. And then you hear some call transfer and you hear hello, and they hang up on you, because for them on their side, oh, we made a connection, the guy hung up, because they don't give a crap, to be honest with you, right? They are not there to help you support and grow your business. They just want your $3, $4, $5 an hour. So, I mean, guys, I've been doing this for 22 years. I'm telling you, cheapest is not always best. In fact, it's usually more harmful than good. I've, the couple times that I've let people talk me into that, it's like been a virus for my CRM. It's just been terrible. So don't do that. And tracking key metrics, one of the biggest mistakes that I made I made a couple of them in my career, but was not tracking KPIs the way that I should have. So what Tony's talking about is incredibly valuable. And if you guys want to work with him, message me when you get set up, and I'll give you my KPIs that I used to use. But we would track, when the lead came in, when we talked to them, how long it took us to contract it, and then how long to contract it to dispo it. But if you're tracking all of that, you can see, just like he said, exactly where the problem is in your business. And now you can run your business like a CEO. So super important stuff there. I want to make sure we really hammer that home, because those are good lessons for you.
Yeah, it's actually a great point. I think I'd like to talk to people when you talk about cheapest labor possible. There's one more double click I'd like to do on that. Occasionally, we get people who will very, very aggressively try to negotiate the cost of cold calling down to the lowest price in the market. And I think that it's really important for you guys to recognize. I had in a past life, I used to do physical goods operations. I was in charge of a global supply chain that we had suppliers in Vietnam and China. And at one point, our CEO went in and they negotiated a very, very aggressive deal with the factory in China. And we were a big part of their business. It was a family-owned business, and they accepted the concessions somewhat begrudgingly. And 6 months later, as our goods started to come in, we noticed corners being cut. We noticed that the quality had gone down. And so I just want you to be aware, as you think about negotiating, when you think about your channel partners and your whole winning supply team, you need every member of your supply team to be able to function, to be successful. And so you really ought to think twice about really aggressively negotiating with your outside vendors as a way to cut costs, because their margin is also their ability to offer future products, to maintain training and quality standards. And so that's just a lesson that when I saw the physical goods in my life come in like significantly worse than what we had before, it made me realize like the connection between, you need each and every member of your supply chain to be doing well. And so even if you can negotiate a pound of flesh out of some of your partners, you really ought to think twice about doing that with some of your vendor partners, because it can have negative ramifications down the road that I think people don't necessarily often understand.
Yep, you can, what do they say? You can have good, fast, and cheap. Which
Yeah.
which one do you want? You know?
Awesome. So guys, if you'd like, we will email out the presentation to everybody, but if you'd like, you can reach my Calendly anytime. I'm super thrilled to talk to you about lead generation, about marketing, about data, and any other aspect that you might have related to facilitation of consistent quality leads. Also, if you guys have any questions at all, from the audience, or David, if you have any additional questions, of course, I'm happy to stick around for a couple minutes and answer them.
Yeah, man, if anybody wants to turn off their mic and kind of jump in there or do the raise the hand thing, I'm not, as much as I'm on Zoom, I'm actually not even really sure how to do it. But no, we'd love to answer any questions that we can, as far as, you know, VAs and data and pulling lists, those types of things, what what we might see as being kind of the most popular lists. But let me ask you this, Tony, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Like, why VAs from Egypt instead of like Latin America or the Philippines or anything like that?
Great question. I think that there's a couple drivers here that are very important. So for a bit of context, I have built teams in India before. I have built teams in the Philippines before, and briefly have built a team in Pakistan before. And so I have built teams in multiple other countries before. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's like something absolutely magical about Egypt that makes it the absolute best and most place, or the only place for talent, but it does have a couple of really, really good things going for it. The first is the time zone change. Like, managing people who are 12 hours, like in the Philippines, can be challenging. You have a very small window of when you're naturally awake. In Egypt, they're 7 hours ahead. And so also a desert culture that prefers to be up at 12 noon and in bed at 4 a.m. And so the fact that their natural cycle of like them being awake and their social schedule is genuinely matched up to our working hours, despite the time difference. And I think that happened by coincidence. I don't want to tell you that we like plan time zones or whatever. Like, I think that was something that I found after I got on the ground in Egypt.
Yeah, when I was in Dubai, that was what we found too. Yeah, I think more of an evening and night kind of culture because it's cooler.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The second thing is that there's a currency crisis going on in Egypt right now. Some of the people that are joining our company are doctors, engineers. We have people who have, high level banking experience from Dubai. And the reason for that is that, most of real estate investors are here for financial freedom, right? If you have $100,000 and it's $50,000 3 years from now, right? Your top and brightest and best are looking for the door. And so there's many, many people in Egypt right now looking for a company that pays in US dollars, of which we do. That's incredibly important. And I think that it makes hiring and recruiting, we have 500 people apply for every position. And so when you think about some of the challenges in real estate where people struggle to bring on really, really talented people, we certainly get a massive leg up from the currency differential.
Mm-hmm.
And the third piece, which I think is the most important, is actually a culture of hard work. Again, this is not something, I think that there are other places that have this, right? It's a must have. So I don't think Egypt like has the market cornered on hard work. I think you can find hardworking people in Latin America. I think you can find hardworking people in India, but I do believe that it's an absolute necessity. And I know that sometimes people are hesitant to outsource to other countries, but the difference in work ethic that I find between just your average bell curve, Egyptian to your average bell curve American in terms of cost to work ethic, I think that we've got several Egyptians that would run circles around some of the senior management of the people that we know, meeting people day to day in the real estate field.
Yeah, the other two things that I've noticed is the accent isn't as pronounced, and the culture there is just more similar to the United States. So when they're asking what type of roof it is, they're not probably going to say, or they most likely would not say, is it a thatch roof?
Right.
Is it a tin can roof, right? Or whatever, So yeah, it's just more aligned with the people here. So it's a smoother conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, by accident, but Egypt is the most pro-American country in the Middle East. It is a very, very American, you know, when I go and hang out with the people who are cold calling or our team leaders, you know, there's 50% Arabic music and 50% what you would expect to hear, you know, driving down the street in Columbus, Ohio. So I do think that that helps, that it is, there's at least a good section in the center Venn diagram between Egypt and America for sure.
Sweet, 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 sweet. Well, cool, man. If nobody has any questions, Tony, share your screen one last time so everybody can get that Calendly. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I'd really invite all of you guys to definitely jump on there and at least have a conversation. And at least you can compare and contrast what, you know, what you're doing now with, you know, with what ResVA can offer you, and, you know, compare some prices and see if, you know, if making a switch would be worth it, or investing in cold callers. Cause, you know, I could tell you, you know, marketing is challenging. You know, I've done a lot of PPC and it's great, but it's incredibly expensive. So I've always liked, you know, much more targeted, you know, marketing, which you can do. So, well, cool. Well, Tony, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on, man, and giving that presentation. That was insightful, and a lot of different kind of behind the scenes of how cold calling works and what some of the best practices are, and, you know, things that we should be looking for.
David, the feeling is mutual. This was a blast. Kudos to you for building such a wonderful marketing system out, like super, super impressive. And thank you everybody for taking the time out of your day to listen in. I hope to talk to some of you, and then David, I'll see you at the family next week.
See you next week, guys. Have a great day. Go get some contracts. If any of you have any questions, feel free to reach out.